All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. Hey, we are less than a week away from preseason beginning. The 2023 season is actually starting now. It's hard to believe this. It feels like this off season has never ended. It's one of these things. Even the news today, it's like free agency all over again. The guys come in. We think we got the deal done. And, I'm already reading fantasy football predictions on Hunt and everything else. And next thing you know, nah, not so soon, not so fast. Bob, how do you make heads or tails out of what happened today with Kareem Hunt and Anthony Barr?
First of all, good evening, Alan.
Yeah.
Good to be back, but a little bit sad to come back.
Yeah.
Let's run down both Kareem Hunt and what happened with Kareem Hunt and Anthony Barr from my perspective. First of all, for those that follow me, yes, I did publish two separate articles on the Saints were expected to sign both Kareem Hunt and Anthony Barr early this afternoon. I wrote those articles based off of a source, Diana Rossini from ESPN, who I now consider an arch nemesis. Rossini's news was, and I quote, "The Saints will sign Kareem Hunt and Anthony Barr pending the results of physicals." Now, what actually happened was Rossini jumped the gun, is not facing any consequences by ESPN, hence arch nemesis. We at the Saints News Network, obviously, as quickly as we could, updated our articles. So if you click onto my article, it is worded quite differently than what the title suggests. I'd like to issue my personal apologies for jumping the gun and actually believing ESPN and their reports. I'd like to think that I'm better than that. I'd like to think that I'm better than a lot of the national talking heads. I slipped up, folks. I apologize. I will do my best to make sure it doesn't happen again. What in actuality happened was both Anthony Barr and Kareem Hunt did visit with the Saints. They were brought in yesterday. The visitation communication continued through today. The news we are now hearing is that Kareem Hunt was or his representatives were contacted by the Indianapolis Colts and initially, at least we believe, offered more money than what the Saints did. The exact contractual terms, nobody knows yet. But Kareem left the New Orleans facility, is going to visit with Indianapolis tomorrow, and we shall see what happens from there. Anthony Barr has, to our knowledge, not received any other offers, but has decided to basically sit on the Saints offer, think about it. He'll probably have his representatives contact other teams to gauge interest throughout the league. So Hunt and Barr are not signed by any team yet, and have at least had communication with the Saints. What that means going forward, who knows? I personally still like their chances of signing Barr. Hunt, I'd put at 50-50 at best at this point.
And it's funny because it wasn't just you. Ian Rappaport reported it. So, it was all over the media. And like I said, fantasy football people were jumping on it. And I was even arguing with one guy who was, well, not really arguing, but just pointing out to one guy who was already putting Hunt in place of Kamara and talking about Kamara being trade bait. I'm like, come on, man. And I know you're fantasy football. That's what it is. And you're thinking about in terms of fantasy impact. And that's a lot different than reality impact. Reality football is Alvin Kamara's a starter. A running back coming in here now is the fourth string back who will be bumped up to third string during the suspension. And you and I didn't get a chance to talk about the suspension, but we will in a second. But he's not supplanting Kamara. In fact, Kamara's having an outstanding camp.
Yeah.
All the beat writers are all saying the same thing, that this year, Kamara looks like the Kamara we saw in 2017 and 2018 and even a little bit of 2019. He's got the burst. He's running incredible pass routes. They've got him deeply involved in the passing game, which was a big complaint last season. And I think that was more a product of the situation, not a knock on his ability. But I think Kamara is much more focused. In fact, the whole team we're hearing is much lighter, in better shape. And that's helping these players have a better camp. And I will talk about the injuries, Jerry, because, there's another column that came out today from Jeff Duncan about the injuries and his ideas possibly to help relieve these injuries. But regardless, you're still looking at a fourth-string running back. You're not looking at a starter. So if Kareem Hunt goes to the Indianapolis Colts, it's not really that big of a loss. Mm-hmm. In fact, I find it interesting that a week ago, Irsay came up from his drunken stupor and said that, he's not, or drug-addicted stupor. He does both. But he said, I'm not paying Jonathan Taylor money. But he's going to pay more money to Kareem Hunt, Mr. 3.8 yards per carry last year. And Jonathan Taylor was your offense last year. To me, if you're going to play this game, why don't you just go ahead and trade Jonathan Taylor for like a fifth or a sixth round pick to us. Y'all can have Kareem Hunt, and I think we got the better end of that deal. So it's really comical. The only thing I am concerned about is I would like to get Anthony Barr in. I still like Kyle Van Noy. I don't know what kind of shape he's in and stuff. Just because, and we were talking, that's why I wanted to get to the injuries, just because of the injuries that we're seeing in the linebacking core right now. We lost Dowell for the season with a ruptured Achilles. You've got a calf injury on a 33-year-old linebacker in Demario Davis, so I doubt he plays at all in the preseason. You still don't have that third linebacker there. And Pete Werner, I'm nervous about that too. So to me, I know you like the linebackers you have in the room, to borrow a phrase from Sean Payton. I think getting some veteran linebackers in, it would be a big help right now.
No question about it, and I've said this all off season too. You and I both have, Brendan, my co-host on the Bayou Blitz, he's echoed those sentiments all off season too. Love Demario Davis, one of the best defensive players at any position in the National Football League. But like you said, he's in his 30s. He's going into his 12th season, and now he's dealing with a calf injury. Is it a long-term injury? I doubt it, especially if they're cautious with it. But it just look hard at this linebacker depth chart. If you take away the name Demario Davis, it's frightening. Mm-hmm. I agree with you with what you said about Pete Werner. Good player, but the jury's still out a little bit on how impactful he can be. Especially if he's the guy in the linebacking core. And remember, Werner's missed a handful of games in each of his first 2 years too. Without Caden Ellis, this is a big hole. I love DeMarco Jackson, and I think he's going to do a good job, but he's unproven. Zach Bond continues to be a poor fit and is having an awful training camp. Nick Anderson, Anthony Orji, they're both solid players, and they could be legitimate players for this defense, but we don't know. And they were undrafted rookies for a reason. Dowell was a special teamer in his own right, but he was having a strong start to camp before he went down with an injury, which just thins out an already treacherous looking situation.
Yeah, I felt, and you and I, like you said, been talking about it all off season. I felt the linebacking core was probably the weak link on this team right now, not because it's a knock on Demario or Pete Werner, but just because there wasn't enough bodies in there, veteran bodies, experienced bodies that you could rely on. And yes, we only play two linebackers most of the time because of the way the league is now. And actually, we're having such a great battle at safety right now that two linebackers is probably what they're going to be going with all the time, except for goal line situations, maybe, because you've got a lot of safeties who can play that outside linebacker and go into that coverage. It's really the pass rushing and the special packages. I think when they want to blitz, I think that's where you're going to see you need that third linebacker on this team. So it's really tough. Calvin, I think they do sign Barr. I think Barr is just going to think about it for a little while. He really doesn't want to practice in this heat, even though they're doing indoor practices. He really doesn't want to sit through training camp right now. He would like just to get a few practices under his belt and just get ready for the season. He's a veteran. He takes care of himself. I think he does come in. Hunt, I'm not so sure about.
Yeah, and like you said, Hunt's a good back, and he has a good skill set for this system. But it's not a great loss. You're talking about a third, a fourth string running back, a situational player at best, and that's while Kamara is suspended. If Kendre Miller and Jamal Williams are who we think they are, then Hunt is buried on that depth chart once Kamara comes back. If Hunt does sign elsewhere, I still do think they kick the tires on some other running backs. I wrote about a couple that were available, ironically, before I published the news that Hunt was going to sign. So there are still a few backs out there, or they could just go with what they have, and hope that those guys stay healthy until Kamara gets back in week 4.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that's the case too. I mean, I'm hearing good things about Miller. I'm hearing great things about Jamal Williams in both running and passing game. So, I'm not as worried about the running backs. You're right. We're really talking about replacing Eno Benjamin, and you're talking about a guy who's going to really play special teams primarily. And I think the Saints, up until the injury to Kirk Merritt, I think the Saints were kind of looking at Merritt as maybe we might use you as a special third down package. And don't forget, you still got Taysom Hill on this team.
Right.
Taysom Hill is your short yardage guy a lot of times. So, that's not as critical. I think they can find a running back, maybe Kenyon Drake if Hunt goes off, and Drake is good for what you want to do with him, and you can let him go after that. It's not that important. It's just we're not looking for a guy who's going to carry this team. We've got the guys who are going to carry this team on this roster already. And the 3 games that Kamara is going to be out, you're not talking about great. Well, Tennessee's probably pretty good, but you're not talking about great run defenses here in Carolina and Green Bay. So, and I think the passing game is really maturing. Everything I keep hearing, and we can go ahead and talk about this right now, guys that are having great training camps. One of the guys I'm hearing is having an outstanding camp and is probably the offensive MVP of this camp is Chris Olave. What I've been reading from John Hendricks, what I've been reading from Nick Underhill and Mike Triplett and Jeff Duncan and all the rest of those guys and the videos I've seen, he's put on a little bit of weight, and it's not like fat, it's muscle, and he's making the contested catches. He had a great catch yesterday over Alontae Taylor, basically a helmet catch, and he's showing he's going out to go get the ball like Michael Thomas did in his early years. So I feel like that this offense can get by in the passing game and has done very well in the red zone. Can get by in the passing game if the running game isn't taking off. Yes, Lattimore too. He's on another level. Lattimore is finally doing, after 7 years now, is finally treating every practice and every game like you're going to play Mike Evans. Who have you heard outside of those two who are really having good camps?
Yeah. Olave and Lattimore are by far the MVPs. Not only of everything I've been hearing, but a lot of the footage I've been seeing too. I mean, those guys just look like I look out of this world right now. Other guys, that we're seeing, Michael Thomas is coming along. After a little bit of a rocky start compared to the expectations that we normally have about Mike. Alvin Kamara. And I know we'll talk more about Kamara in a minute, so I'll keep this short. Kamara looks faster, and more decisive than he has, at least in the last few years. Defensively, we just got done talking about linebackers, but DeMarco Jackson has been a fairly consistent standout. Alontae Taylor, for all the attention given to Lattimore so far, and rightfully so, Alontae Taylor has been every bit his equal, which is that much more a testament to how well Olave, Mike Thomas, and Rashid Shaheed, too, before he went down with his own soft tissue injury. It's just a testament to how good those guys are playing, because Lattimore and Alontae Taylor just look like a superstar tandem of cornerbacks. Jordan Howden, the fifth-round rookie, he's already worked his way into a lot of first-team reps, with the nickel and dime defenses. Both as a deep safety and in slot, which bodes well because I still expect Marcus May to serve at least a 2 or 3 game suspension.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, I expect that to happen as well. That case has not been settled, so it's still a long way from a suspension. But yeah, I do expect that.
Yeah, and for Howden to step up like he has, Lonnie Johnson has had some moments. Ugo Amadi, who a lot of us believe that he was just going to be a special teams addition. He's made some plays in coverage too. I won't lie. Next to the linebacker position, safety depth was what I was most concerned about on this entire team. Beyond Tyrann Mathieu and Marcus May, especially when we expect a May suspension. The fact that Amagi, Lonnie Johnson, and even Jordan Howden are playing so well, at least at this stage in camp, I think bodes extremely well. And we saved the best, maybe the most surprising, for last. And you and I talked about it before we went on the air. Peyton Turner, going into his third year, the light switch looks like it's coming on a little bit for Peyton. He's looking more confident. He's acting rather than reacting to plays. And he's had a pretty disruptive start to camp. Carl Granderson, mind you, he's no slouch. He's going to put up a fight for those snaps. But Peyton Turner, has flashed some of the reasons why the Saints valued him as a first-round pick a couple of years ago.
Absolutely, and Calvin mentions the tight end group as a whole, and I think Juwan Johnson is growing up. We're watching him grow up before our eyes. He is getting a good repertoire, rapport, I should say, not repertoire, but rapport with Derek Carr. Very effective in the red zone. There's one play they like to run. Jimmy Graham made a living off of it, but you saw him run it a lot. It's where basically the tight end goes on a seam route down the middle, that nobody can cover, and all the tight ends are making a living off of that. Jimmy Graham still shows he's got a little bit left in the tank. Foster Moreau shown no side effects from his treatments for blood cancer. So he, for a position that last year looked terrible, this looks like a really good position that you can actually get 3 guys contributing often in this offense. So I'm very, very happy with what I'm seeing out of that. It's just linebacker and offensive line are the only things I'm really concerned about. And it's really the injuries along the offensive line that are bothering me. Pete is still out. Penning has missed a little bit of time. He's back in there, and he seems to be doing okay. They have Hurst now at guard. So I think I'm worried about a lot of the depth at the offensive line because I think it's very thin right now. How do you see this offensive line?
Yeah, and yeah, look, I got into it a little bit with a guy on Facebook earlier this afternoon, who just kind of threw out there as a comment on, one of my articles, that the Saints need to stop signing skill position players and worry about the offensive line. And I asked him what he wanted, what exactly his ideas were, because look at it on paper. Ramczyk and McCoy are among the best in the league at their positions. They spent a first-round draft choice on Penning for a reason. He's a mauler as a run blocker. He's got the quick feet to develop as a pass protector. If he stays on the field. Ruiz, you could argue that Ruiz was their most consistent lineman last year and is trending upward. And Pete, when he's on the field, is still a good run blocker, a well-respected run blocker. But it's the injuries, like you said. It's the injuries that have decimated this unit the last 2 years now. I think they made an upgrade in depth. I mean, if Penning can stay on the field, then James Hurst is your sixth lineman. Hurst is a guy that could start at either guard or tackle for a lot of teams throughout the league. In Throckmorton, you have a guy who's a capable starter, even if it's just in the short term. Because let's face reality, you're only going to have Pete for 6, 7, 8 games at tops. So you're going to need to address that line depth. So you have a Throckmorton, you have a Hurst. They drafted Nick Saldiveri, now a rookie, so he's going to have to show he can play. And they brought in Max Garcia, who's been an accomplished starter in this league, along with Storm Norton, in free agency as well. So on paper, I like this group, but like you said, they have to stay healthy. If they're healthy, and remain relatively intact for the year, this is still one of the better offensive lines in the league. Certainly top 6 or 8 in the league.
Yeah, the big thing is I'm concerned about the guard position, and you're going to have to go through a little bit of growing pains with Penning. I do like that they've been running a lot of screens to Penning's side, and Penning is getting out there in front of the screens and killing people. That's a big man who's very light on his feet. He is, Zach Strafe was 6'7", and I think he was like 320, 330, something like that. But Zach, I love you, man, but I gotta criticize your body shape, man. You were shaped like a pear.
Yeah.
You really were. All your weight was around your hips. Okay, Penning is shaped like an inverted triangle. Broad shoulders, little waist, a lot of power in that upper body, and he can move. So I'm really excited when he puts all the pieces together. He could be like a William Rofe. Now, I'm not putting him at William Rofe's level because, I mean, that's NFL 75 seasons, all-decade team of the 90s and the 2000s. That is hard to do. But he can be an elite left tackle.
Yep.
Once he puts all these pieces together, you can see why the Saints liked him. You can see the athleticism. You can see the ability. It's just a question of putting all the pieces together. In the meantime, though, he is doing a good job in camp right now. So I am very optimistic about the left and right sides. I'm nervous about the interior portion of the game. And unfortunately, that's going to be a problem for a quarterback like Carr, because Carr is like any other quarterback. You get pressure in his face. He's not a very mobile quarterback. He's not going to pick and slide. He may pick and slide a little bit better like Breeze did, but he's not going to be Breeze-like in his ability to reset and throw the ball on rhythm like that. I mean, very few people can do that. So I want to see the guard position really step up and be effective, and that's something I'm going to watch for this weekend, Sunday, when the Saints play the Chiefs. How those guards, especially when you start rotating these guys in, the depth players, how do they stand up in that situation? Wide receivers. How do you feel about this wide receiving core? We talked about Chris Olave, we talked about Michael Thomas. After that,
I still don't care for it, Alan. A.T. Perry has had some moments in camp. And I ultimately think that he'll stick around. At the back half of the depth chart, he's going to have to show, going to have to make some plays in the preseason. Going to have to
Mm-hmm.
show that he can, play special teams. But for you, Traquan Smith haters, and I am the president of that club.
Yeah.
Tra- Traquan is going to be tough to displace from this team based off of the way the other receivers are playing. Brian
Yeah.
Edwards has had it's been invisible,
Mm-hmm.
up to this point. Kiki Kute has made some plays, but he's a smaller receiver, and we know the Saints like to keep bigger receivers on their roster. Who is playing well, or at least he's doing he's meeting the coach's expectations. Keith Kirkwood,
Yeah.
and Keith Kirkwood is never going to be a Pro Bowler, never going to be a top receiver. But he's a guy that's bounced around the league a few years. Which let's face it, who among us can say that? That we've
Mm-hmm.
had any NFL career at all. Keith can play special teams. We've seen him make some plays near the goal line for the Saints in the past. So, Keith Kirkwood, if this keeps trending the way it is, Keith could stick around at the back half of the depth chart. But again, if you had to pick your five wideouts today, obviously you have your top three, in Thomas, Olave, and Shaheed, who's probably going to miss most of the preseason. To leave Traquan Smith off of this roster is going to be tough. And I believe me, folks, I want it. I want to be able to pack Traquan Smith's bags for him. But based off of what I've seen right now, those people that want the Saints to are begging for the Saints to make a trade for a guy like Hunter Renfrow. It makes a lot. I still don't see it happening, but it makes a lot of sense.
Especially Calvin says Traquan's a rash; it just won't go away. I equate it more to an STD, and penicillin can't get rid of that. But yeah, that is true. This is why Hunter Renfrow continues to circulate among Saints fans. Keith Kirkwood is having a better camp than the rest of the receivers, which is, this is not a knock on Keith at all, but it's disappointing because you brought in veteran guys who you thought would be better than they are. Brian Edwards is a great example. He's an invisible man, and he's not having that great of a camp. The kid that brought in from the Steelers, I don't even see his name
No.
in the when I see Lynn Bowden Jr.'s name show up more often than anybody else's. It's just, and they bring in more and more receivers. Every time you turn around, they sign an LSU receiver. They're bringing in guys left and right, which shows that they're not happy with what they've got right now. They're just not impressing anybody. So, we knocked Traquan Smith, and I don't want him on this team either. But it's like Andres Pete. We're bringing guys to compete against him, and they're not pushing him off the roster. You can hate him all you want for his injuries and everything, but the guys that they have to compete against him are not beating him out. And I think Dennis Allen deliberately put him at second team. Of course, he gets hurt, but deliberately put him in second team to motivate him to be a more consistent player and try and stay healthy. It's very frustrating. So what I want to see also in this game Sunday is I want to see how these receivers are now in the game time. Are any of these guys gamers? Or are they just a bunch of guys wearing jerseys running around out there? They've got it, and it won't be the excuse the quarterbacks they have aren't very good.
Right.
Because all three of these quarterbacks are playing very, very well. Even Jake Haener, as a rookie, you're seeing better progression out of him than any other quarterback the Saints have had in the past 20 years as rookies or, undrafted free agent quarterbacks. It's just he is that much better than those guys. Now, I'm curious to see how he plays, too. I'm looking forward to watching him in the third and fourth quarter. I'm not expecting, much, but I want to see, does he make good decisions with the football? Does he panic? If he's got to go throw on the run, Are his passes accurate? What does mechanics look like? And everything I've heard about him is it all looks good. I mean, he gets the verbiage down, which was a problem for Garrett Grayson. He couldn't even get the verbiage down.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff I'm looking forward to seeing. Is there anything that you're interested in seeing against the Chiefs? Because the Chiefs aren't going to play their starters, or if they do, they might play them a series.
I expect that too. And we've already heard from Dennis Allen, that we will see most of the Saints starters for at least a couple of series. But like you said, Haener and the other third stringers, rookies, undrafted guys, they'll play at least half the game. Even though most of us don't expect Haener to see any regular season action, barring a Titanic type of disaster, I want to see what Haener can accomplish too. Not so much can he put points on the board, but what kind of command does he have of the offense? Everything that I have seen from Jake so far is he's extremely decisive. He has picked up the offense extremely well. But the other things I want to see, aside from Kamara, aside from Jamal Williams, who we know can play, how's Kendre Miller going to look in this offense? How's Foster Moreau going to look with Derek Carr throwing him the football in the Saints uniform? What's Jimmy Graham have left? You already touched on the offensive line. We know what they have, in the starting six. If they're healthy, but what kind of depth does this unit have? Because we know they're going to need it during the course of this season. Defensively, the cornerbacks. We've talked about the starters, but Anthony Johnson, is having a good camp. Jordan Howden, we've already touched on him. How's he going to look in a game situation? What about DeMarco Jackson and those other young linebackers? Are they going to show? Are they going to show us why the coaches had faith in them, or are they going to show the coaches why we haven't had much faith in them? Peyton Turner, once the lights go on, is he going to continue his progression? The defensive tackles, what I want to see. In today's today's age of football, you see very little, really no heavy hitting or anything like that. Trench work. So you don't. This is a completely revamped defensive tackle position. So even if the starters don't play a lot of downs, how are the backups going to handle things in the trenches as the game goes along? And obviously no injuries. Keep your fingers crossed. That's the number one thing I root for in these things.
Oh, look, Paula's jumped in. Hey, Paula, how are you? Paula. The defensive tackles for sure. Ryan Brzee, how does he look out there? Isaiah Foskey, all the rookies actually, because I think a lot of them have. I think this whole class has a good shot of making this roster. Yeah. We talked about Howden, we talked about Miller. Obviously, going to count on those guys, but A.T. Perry, how does he look? Because he's going to be out there with the third stringers. How does he look out there? Who's going to be the kickoff return guy? Is it going to be Shaq Davis? Is it going to be? I don't think Kurt Merritt's going to play, but is it going to be Kurt Merritt? That's the kind of stuff. The kicking battle. Will Lutz seems to be having a better camp than he's had the past couple of years. Maybe the competitions get pushing him. He kicked a 63-yard field goal the other day indoors. And apparently that was to decide whether they're going to run gassers, and he did it, So, but yeah, does all that stuff translate, into a game situation? I can remember, this is funny, I can remember listening to Buddy D's show, and it was after a loss by the Saints, and Jim Haslett said, I don't really understand why we played so badly, because we had such a good week of practice, and the team looked really energetic at practice. And as soon as that interview's over with, Buddy takes a call, and the first guy calls says, "Well, can I buy tickets to practice then?" Because the game I saw was terrible. I want to see that stuff carry over. Speaking of way back when in the Saints, you were talking about the Saints not having very physical practices.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Hank Stram had this wild idea to do 3-a-days.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know what that is, what two-a-days are, two-a-days was old school football where you had a practice in pads in the morning and a practice in pads in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Well, Hank Stram did 3-a-days. So you had you had dinner, then you had a practice at night. And I think it was the second or third preseason game in '76. I used to play 6 preseason games back then. The second or third preseason game, and the Saints just got smoked. And one of the players said, "Man, I'm so glad we had 3-a-day practices, because you can imagine how bad that score would have been if we only had 2-a-day practices." So, there's something to be said about having very physical practice, I guess. But speaking of which, we talked about new injuries. A lot of the injuries they're having, it seems to be right now, a soft tissue, what they call soft tissue issues. Calf injuries, groin injuries. And Jeff Duncan had a column out today talking about, speculating that maybe the heat of Louisiana is getting to some of these players, because even though you're getting plenty of water, even though you are getting the electrolytes and the trainers are on top of it, they've had to change the practices now mostly indoors. Even the 2-hour practice where they would do 2 hours outside for the fans, they do 1 hour outside, 1 hour indoors. So Duncan just kind of floated a trial balloon out there and said maybe it's time for the Saints to go back to having training camp somewhere else, somewhere cooler. And most of the generation, not so much on this show, but most of the generation of Saints fans that are out there now only can think of the Greenbrier,
right,
when it comes to that. Well, for years they were in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And, yeah, I know about that, Danny. My brother said, I did 2 days in high school. Yeah, I know that.
Same.
Yeah. Yeah, and they used to deny you guys water, too, if you keep you in shape. Make y'all practice harder. But, yeah, so if you were to do a practice somewhere else, do you think, or not practice, I'm sorry, training camp somewhere else, do you think that would be a good idea, or is it really important for them to have the practices in training camp all in Metairie?
I'm not against having practice either somewhere else or indoors. I realize that football players, any athlete, when you play an outdoor sport, you have to be used to the extreme conditions, whether it's heat or cold, wind, rain, sleet or snow, all that stuff, because you're going to have to deal with it at some point in time. But the reality is this too, coaches, players, you want to accomplish a certain thing from a technical aspect, in training camp and in practices. And if you are dealing with extreme weather conditions, in this case, the heat, and the humidity, which is just as damaging, that, Alan. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be able to fully focus on the mental aspect of what you're trying to accomplish. These guys are paid handsomely to keep in shape, to keep in football shape. So I'm not. I'm an old school way of thinker in a lot of ways, but I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh, they have to practice in this 100-degree heat day in and day out because that's the only way they're going to get better." Bullshit. Yeah, because that's just not true. As far as the injuries as a partial result of the weather conditions, don't blame it on the training staff, folks. Not yet, anyway. The human body, no matter how well conditioned you are, can only take so much, and that's what we're kind of seeing right now. Like you said, Alan, they're keeping hydrated, they're keeping the electrolyte level up, but they're losing it just as fast as the intake is happening, and that's where the problems are arising. That's why they've had to cut practices short, move it around indoor. And that, make no mistake, that's extremely disturbing to the coaches and the players and what they're trying to accomplish from a technical aspect. So no, I'm not. I'm absolutely not against moving practices somewhere else. Selfishly, I wouldn't mind seeing them move back to the Greenbrier, because I could do, I could do shows like this, as your personal boots on ground reporter, because it's so close to my home. But whatever even and remember, folks, when they did come to the Greenbrier, they weren't there for the entire training camp. They basically split it in half. And I know, all 3 years they were up north, they finished 7-9. Don't blame it on the Greenbrier. Blame it on the talent on it. Look at those rosters, and tell me you could have won with many of them.
Exactly. I mean, I can go through, all the Saints training camp facilities. They were in California the first 3 years of existence, 67 to 69. Starting in 1970, they were at Vero Beach, Florida, where the Dodgers do their spring training. So we're there till, they were there except for 1975, where they went to Nichols, of all places, on that campus. And as Wayne Mack put it, the Saints were practicing at Nichols, and it became a blood fest for the mosquitoes, because this is before they had all the ability to spray everything down, and indoor practices and stuff like that. It would rain, and they would go out there after it rained to go out and practice, and it was just grass and fields. It wasn't field turf or anything like that. And Archie Manning says you tackle somebody and a cloud of mosquitoes would come up, that kind of stuff. He said it was horrible. Went back to Vero Beach. When Tom Benson bought the team, they went to Hammond, and that's the one when Bobby Hebert said it's a wonder no one died, because it was so hot up there. Then they went to Ruston, and I think that's the training camp that the players had an open revolt because they kept serving chicken every day, and they said no more chicken. Players were actually sneaking out, going to fast food restaurants just to eat something different. And then, of course, you had La Crosse, Wisconsin, which was that was the bulk of the Mora years, and then even into Dicka's time, and when they built the indoor facility, they started doing it at Metairie again. Sean Payton took them to Millsaps, I believe, in 2006. That was the one. It was either 2006 or 2007. One of those camps was the one that Scott Fujita, they had a water slide competition. And Scott Fujita figured out if you can get water between him and the mat, that he could increase his speed. They were racing each other.
Yes.
Yeah, they were racing each other down the water slide. These are grown men now, racing for money down the water slide. And Scott Fujita did that with the water, and he went through a fence because he came flying out that chute. They ran out of water. The mat stayed, and he kept going. He went through a wooden fence, like to kill himself. And then from that point, they went to the Greenbrier, and from that point on, it's always been in New Orleans, especially once they had the indoor facility. But I was looking at the schedule real quick, and for those who also said, the Saints have to get used to playing in the heat and everything else like that, you play Tennessee at home, so you're indoors. You're at Carolina, that in September. Who knows? It could be warm, could be cool. Don't know. And then when I say cool, I mean in the 80s, not the 100s.
But that's also a night game.
Yeah, that's a night game. You're up in Wisconsin to play Green Bay. Then you're home against Tampa for the first week in October. You're at New England, at Houston. Houston is an indoor facility. You're not really outdoors in the heat, quote unquote, until you play Jacksonville Thursday night. And that's October 19th. And anyone who's lived in the South knows about mid-October, you start getting those cool fronts coming through. Then you're at Indianapolis, again, an indoor facility. You're home against the Bears inside. You're at Minnesota. So I'm trying to find a hot game. I really am. I'm now into November. Your first outdoor in the weather game, and I think the Rams have a thing you can close the roof. So your first outdoor in the weather game is New Year's Eve against Tampa Bay.
Wow.
Yeah. The schedule really after Jacksonville. I should say. No, I'm sorry. Jacksonville's at home. So you're not even in Florida. You're in Jacksonville. So yeah, your first outdoor weather game is at Tampa Bay New Year's Eve. Yeah, because Atlanta, that's in a dome. The Giants are playing here. Yeah, after the Carolina game. You only have one other really questionable weather day, and that's Tampa Bay, and who knows what's going to be like New Year's Eve. Could be in the 30s, could be in the 70s. Yeah, there's a depth chart out right now. I never pay much attention to these, but there is a depth chart that's come out because they kind of need this for the media.
Mm-hmm.
Now where is it? Have you had a chance to look at it? I had it a second ago.
Yeah, I have. I glanced over it, and Matt, my thoughts on it are meaningless. It's something for the media, for us to talk about and relate to you folks. And it gives you an idea of at least who is probably going to play the first couple series of the game. It's by no means indicative on what we're going to see for the regular season whatsoever. And that's that. We already have an idea of who we're not going. You're not going to see Rashid Shaheed. You're not going to see some of the other guys. You're not going to see Demario Davis, like you mentioned, Alan. And a handful of other guys that are nursing injuries. The other guys that Dennis Allen said, the starters that would play, we'll see them for a series, 2 tops. And then it'll be kind of a scatter fest the rest of the way. Fitting pieces in here or there. To see what sticks. That's the preseason, folks.
Yeah, I'm looking at it real quick because there was a couple of things I wanted to mention. It was most of the players we've been talking about. Thomas. This is who they have listed as a starter, and I want y'all to pay attention because it is 2 guys being named as starters in some of these positions.
Right.
So you have Thomas, Penning, Pete/Hurst. Of course, Pete's hurt, so Hurst is going to start. McCoy, Ruiz, Ramczyk, Juwan Johnson / Taysom Hill, depending on the formation. Chris Olave. So that's your offensive starters. With Derek Carr, Kamara, and Prentice. On defense, Granderson, Kalen Saunders, Nathan Shepard, Cam Jordan. No big surprises there. Pete Werner, Demario Davis, who won't be playing, so you'll probably see DeMarco Jackson in that spot. And Zach Bond. Again, they've got to give Zach Bond snaps. They have to decide whether he's going to be the guy or not. So I know Zach Bond's going to be a disaster in coverage, but this is the time to play him because the game doesn't count. They have Ryan Connolly listed behind Zach Bond, which I find interesting. They've got Anafre Orji listed. They have his name backwards, actually, in this thing. Anafre Orji listed as the 3rd string guy. So they have Sewell at 2nd string behind Pete Werner. Like I said, DeMarco Jackson, and then Ty Summers and Nick Anderson at the middle linebacker. So, that's going to be interesting to see how those guys all play because we talked about that depth problem. They have Debo and Taylor listed as cornerback number 2, and they have a slash by those guys' names. Of course, Marcus May, Tyrann Mathieu, and Lattimore. And then the kicking battle, I'm curious to see how Blake Gillikin does. I've heard a little bit about the tattooed man, Lou Headley, but I'm curious to see how that plays out. Will Lutz and Blake. Is it Group A or is it Group?
I think it's Group A, but I'm not
Yeah.
100% sure.
Yeah. There's going to be that battle going on. And of course, Zach Wood, is a long snapper. So they have Rashid Shaheed listed as a kick returner. No one else listed as kick returner. So I don't know how that's going to play out. I mean, you're going to see different guys there all night.
Yeah.
I expect to see a lot of the receivers back there. I expect to see A.T. Perry back there. I expect to see Brian Edwards back there. Lewis Kidd. I'm sorry, not Lewis Kidd. Sorry, that's a guard and a tackle. But James Washington, Quan Baker, Lynn Bowden Jr. I expect to see a lot of those guys returning kicks.
Yeah, and I think, and we've talked about this before. If this team keeps 6 receivers, it's only because one of them is going to be a returner, a kick return option outside of Rashid Shaheed. If none of them distinguish themselves, Saints aren't going to keep 6 receivers on this active roster.
No. And I would not be surprised if they go and pick somebody up after the final cuts. Because, like I said, none of these guys, I mean, I just mentioned James Washington, the former Steeler. You have not heard his name at all in camp. Good, bad, indifferent, nothing. It's like he's an invisible man. Elias Merriweather, that's another guy to watch to see if he returns kicks, because that's somebody who's fighting for that final roster spot. I mean, it's just, I don't think they're happy at all with any of these guys. And there's going to be some guys who just not even going to be dressed yet because they just got signed this week, so they don't expect them to be out there. They may play in that third preseason game. The LSU receiver, somebody I'm thinking of,
right,
in that regard. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting from the standpoint of you get to see, where some of these guys should be in the rotation. But as far as a depth chart, I'm not too sold on any of that stuff right now. What do you expect to see Sunday? Do you expect to see a clean game, and do you expect a lot of mistakes?
I expect a lot of mistakes on both sides because it is a preseason game and the first one at that. I think if Dennis Allen and his staff feels like they had a successful outing, it's because that they got a couple of good series from their first teamers and a couple of good series from their second teamers. As you watch this game, as they get into the third, fourth, fifth teamers, guys that are going to be practice squad guys or maybe not in the league at all, that's when the game is going to start to get a little bit sloppy. But we've already highlighted a handful of position battles on the Saints alone. The Chiefs are going to go through the same thing, and most of their starters won't play at all. So I would expect a very hard-fought contest because, again, these guys are fighting for literally their lives, their professional lives.
Yeah.
But I expect I don't expect a clean game whatsoever.
Yeah, I only will care in the first couple of series, about false start penalties and having to take timeouts and stuff because of plays coming in too slowly. I want to see a crisp game from the first stringers. I want to see them come out there, line up quick, get the ball out of their hand, get the ball down the field. I don't care if it's touchdown and field goal. I would like to see a touchdown, but that's not critical to me because you don't know what they're trying to do in certain situations. Certain situations, they may try and just run the football in when you know very well they can throw the ball in just because they want to see if they can pound that ball for a touchdown. So that stuff doesn't bother me a whole lot. What bothers me are a lot of mental mistakes, guys not looking the ball in, dropping the football, guys going off sides, guys holding, guys getting beat, just not the offense not looking in sync. That's the kind of stuff that bothers me more than anything else. I'm gonna be at the beach actually this weekend. So it's I'm going to try to see the whole game. I don't know how much of the game I will see. I'll probably have to watch it on replay, but I'm going to try and see as much of it as I can. Just simply because I may be on a boat during that afternoon and then go out to dinner that night. I don't know. And the guys I'm with, it's all my college friends. I mean, they're football fans, but they're not like, I got to see a preseason game. I got to see football. Then that's not the kind of guys they are. The guys like, I got to drink. I got to drink. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. In fact, I just got a text message from a couple of them wanting to know what time we're gonna be getting in town. So, but it's it's funny. I thought about that after we had already made arrangements, picking a good weekend to go, because we used to go end of July. A couple of years we tried to go the end of August. Well, what happens at the end of August? Hurricanes.
Right.
We've had 2 of these canceled because of hurricanes. In fact, we were supposed to go the weekend after Ida, 2 years ago, 2021. We were supposed to go that weekend, and I go and text them all like, yeah, I'm not going to make it. I got trees in my house. I can't make it this time, So, and COVID killed it one year too. So we've had a good time. We had a good time last year. This is something we've been doing for, 10 years now, 15 years now, something ridiculous like that. Yeah, it's been a while. We have done this for a while, and one of my friends just bought a condo. This is the second condo he's ever bought out in Orange Beach. So we don't have to pay for a room this time. That's good. We just got to pay gas on the boat, which I think the room might have been cheaper. I've seen the price of gas.
Yeah.
Real quick, last thing I wanted to talk about before we go. We didn't get a chance to talk much about this, but Bob, are you smoking again?
I am.
Oh, you bastard! How long did you go without smoking?
About 30 days.
Oh, dude. All right. I won't give you shit about it, but you got to quit that shit.
I'll try. I'll start all over. I don't think the family wanted me to try again when they were sequestered onto the beach with me. So they let me slide.
I gotcha. We didn't talk much about the Alvin Kamara suspension because it happened, I believe, while we were kind of either while you were on vacation, or I think it may have been, I don't remember what day it was. Was it Wednesday or Thursday of last week? I just don't remember. 3-game suspension. Only missing only missing 3 games, and they're not really big games. You have 1 divisional game, 1 other NFC game, and an AFC game. Were you happy with this outcome?
Thrilled. Thrilled, because I expected no less than 4 games. And given that it's Goodell, I still expected 6. I won't lie, and I said that as recently as our Wednesday show on the Bayou Blitz. I'm thrilled with it, and like you said, now these look on paper to be winning winful games, but they have to go out and do it.
Yeah.
And they drafted Kendre Miller. They signed Jamal Williams exactly for this situation. So these guys are going to have to go out and play well. I think realistically, if you look on paper, if the Saints come out of this any worse than 2-1, then I'm not going to say they're in trouble after 3 games, but I will consider it a disappointment. Kamara is not going to get a lot of work on during the preseason, but we should expect to see him a little. to basically keep him sharp, and so that way they can just get him, get him on the ground and running, when he comes back. But yeah, I think 3 games, and anybody that tells you that they're disappointed by that, really didn't have a grasp on the situation. So yeah, I think it's great news for the Saints.
I had a meme that somebody sent me. I think my son was the one that sent it to me. In fact, it was Alvin Kamara goes to meet with Roger Goodell, and it was a scene from Return of the Jedi with Goodell as the Emperor sitting in the throne room, and there's Luke with the handcuffs. So, I was very thrilled. It was only 3 games, and I looked at the schedule right after they announced it. I'm going, oh yeah, these are 3 games. Those are 3 games that I think the Saints can afford to missing. The only other spot I saw that was maybe in the middle of the season, but if I'm going to pick 3 games I'd like for him to not have Alvin Kamara, it's those 3.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, and I agree with you, if they come out 2-1 out of that, that's fine. And I can even handle an open day loss to Tennessee because it doesn't hurt you really in a playoff battle. You really don't want to lose that Carolina game. That's a divisional game, and I think a 1-2 record, really puts them in a hole. Because now you're fighting to get back to 2-2, which you'd have to do versus Tampa. And then you go on the road for 2 games, trying to build a winning record.
Right.
Get the wins. Go 2-1 at worst, and have Kamara come in, and he'll be good to go against Tampa. That's a great game for him to come back against. I think he'll have a big game against New England, in fact, and Houston. So I think those are all good games. What is this? Miller game 1 is going to have a what the fuck moment showing his speed. Showcases speed. I'm not sure. Calvin, I'm not sure what you mean by that. I don't know. Miller who? I'm lost. Okay, that's fine. I think that accountability speech that Kamara gave, I think that was part of the deal. I think when he had the conversation with Roger said, listen, I'm going to give you a 3-game suspension, but I need you to go out and publicly accept responsibility, and you're going to have to do these things. And he did, So I think that's the, I don't know. I think that was all part of the deal, and I had no problem with it. Oh, I know who you're talking about. Okay, all right. I know who. Never mind. I just put it together now. I'm sorry, Calvin. You're talking about the rookie, Miller, game 1. And, yeah, he's going to have one of those moments where Tennessee's going to be like, who the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
That reminds me of another story. So, Ralph Marlboro talked about Ruben Mays. And how Ruben Mays, when he ran, it was like you didn't realize how fast he was running because he kind of glided as he ran. And I can remember in 1986 watching those preseason games going, who the hell is this number 36? Because back then, you didn't get very much reporting on training camp and things like that, And I didn't know who Ruben Mays was. I'd never heard of him in college because you didn't see University of Washington football games in Louisiana, that's for sure. College football was nothing like how it is today, where you see all kinds of games. You can get all kinds of game footage on players. You didn't see any of that stuff. So, and Dalton Hilliard was a big draft pick. He was a second-round pick, LSU kid. People were mad that we didn't take Gary James with him. That was, speaking of LSU, there's Joseph Adai. But, so you see Ruben Mays out there, and I can just remember him running like crazy in the preseason games. I kept going, who is this 36? So, And I agree. I think he will have a moment where he just blows right past the defense on an outside run. He'll put his foot in the ground and he goes. So I hope I have a Ruben Mays moment out of that. I hope he just doesn't do it during preseason because I can remember us during preseason going, okay, we've seen enough of Kamara. Take him out, put him in bubble wrap. Do not let him play another down. I kind of want Miller to be kind of the surprise on week 1, where the announcers and everyone is just like having to do all this research now. We got to go find TCU footage. We didn't know about this guy, Kendre Miller. We didn't think he was going to play as much as he did. So we have all this Lamar Hunt. I'm sorry. I knew I was going to do it at least once. We have all this Hunt footage here. We were planning on showing, and Hunt's not even in the game. This guy Miller's taking over. So, yeah, that would be great. Bob, real quick, what do you have going on in Bayou Blitz tomorrow night?
A lot more camp reports. Hopefully some good news, personnel movement wise. And no more bad news from the injury front. We'll Brandon and I will continue to preview the Kansas City preseason opener. And talk about our expectations for the remainder of the preseason as well. I'm working on getting a guest. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull it off. A lot of the guest former players that we would normally have, they're on their own vacations now, so might have to wait for the regular season for that one.
This game is going to be Fox 8, so it's going to be the Fox announcers, not the national Fox announcers. I'm sorry, the Saints announcers. So Joel Meyer. Probably Jonathan Stitchcomb, and I don't know if Jonathan Vilma is going to do it or not. He did it last year. But it's going to be Channel 8's basic announcing package. Same with next week when they go to Los Angeles to play the Chargers. They also have workouts with the Chargers. So I expect fewer starters to play week 2.
Yeah.
Because they're going to get what they want to see through those inter-game scrimmages. And then, of course, the last preseason game is against the Houston Texans. That is just going to be on broadcast on regular Fox. So it's going to be the Fox normal national televised crew calling those games. So just to give everybody a heads up on all that. Sunday tickets on YouTube now. So I think you have to subscribe to YouTube TV, or you have to subscribe to somehow it on YouTube. I don't know, but I think that's how this works now. So, okay. Anyway, that's all I got tonight. Bob, is anything we did not touch on? It feels like I've been talking Saints football all day, and I hope I didn't miss anything.
No, I think we touched on everything, and yours truly is tired.
Yes, I can tell. Well, I kept it at about an hour tonight, so it's shorter. Next week, we'll break down the Chiefs game, what we like, good, bad, and ugly on that. We'll preview the workouts with the Chargers. Remember, everybody, that there's only one cut down again, so the cut down is after the Texans game. So, we're still back on that kind of schedule. In the meantime, thanks, everybody, for sticking with us. We'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.